Sneelock. Welcome to another episode of Old Sneelock's Workshop. I'm out here in the backyard in the farthest corner of the property because I'm going to be doing something that I do just about every year at this time. I have a fireplace now, and that means I'm going to gather firewood. I don't normally do it here in July, the hottest part of the year, but it's a good day, it's not raining, and I got an opportunity to show you what I do. What I do is I use 4 fence posts and a couple of pieces of 2x4, or if I have them, 2 more fence posts, to make a wood rack so that I can stack my wood up off the ground. I've done the old thing where you set it on the ground, but the bottom row of wood tends to attract termites. And since there's a compost pile right behind me, and the barn that used to sit here, I had to rebuild because the termites ate almost the whole bottom of it off. I try and keep the wood up off the ground. If I can keep 6 inches between the wood and the ground, the termites don't climb that high. So I use these fence posts. And you have to have a certain kind of fence post. You want one with the spades. Spades do something that no other thing does for me. Gives me a place to set the 2x4s, or I prefer fence posts, but evidently I only have 4 this time. Now, some of you guys have mentioned the idea of a fence post driver. Well, up until I moved here, I didn't have one. And all a fence post driver is in this case is a piece of pipe about 3-inch with a heavy casting on top of it. Now this one looks like it was made just by putting the steel pipe in a pot and then pouring hot iron in around it so that it chilled off and froze to the sides of the pipe, because that's all it is. Now with the first, and for me, the easiest way to determine what a foot is just use my foot, because my foot comes out to just about a foot long. Then I take the 2x4s that I'm going to use for the cross beams. They don't have to be 2x4s, they can be fence posts, they can be pieces of pipe, or you can use a 4x4 or something larger if you need. Having the board laid out there gives me the dimensions for the next beam. Now my fireplace can handle up to a 24-inch log, but I usually cut them about 18. They're a little lighter that way, a little easier to handle and maneuver around. So I typically set the posts about a foot apart. That puts the two 2x4 beams, or as I said before, fence posts or whatever you're using. It set those at about 14 to 15 inches apart. That way an 18-inch piece of wood will sit right on top of it. And that's pretty much all there is to making a log rack. Before we moved here to the new house, I used to do that job with a stepladder and a sledgehammer, and it was a lot harder. When I moved here, the little barn that I mentioned having the termites eating it, inside that barn was this fence post driver. Now, it's pretty well beat up, but it was definitely made to be a fence post driver. Somebody put some work into it. It's a piece of thin wall 3-inch steel pipe, more like structural tubing. It's not even like gas line. It's more like structural tubing. It's only about 1/8 of an inch thick on the wall. And all it's really there for is to guide the weight that slides down the beam. When I set this over the top of the fence post, the total weight of this driver is about 10 pounds. So it's easy enough to lift up and drop. And that's all you really have to do. Now I sometimes want to make it go faster and I pull down on it while I'm doing it, but really all you need to do is just drop it. That's more than enough to make it drive a fence post. Now I typically only use this 4 times a year, but when I was putting in the service for the house and I had to drive 2 ground stakes, this came in real handy. And it does a fine job on making a log rack. Now these fence posts you can pick up at your local home store, big box store, hardware store, farm supply. They run anywhere from a couple of bucks up to $5. So I've got, well, these are old fence posts that were sitting around here at the house. So I've got $0 in this because the boards are off a pallet. So this log rack is well worth the price I paid for it. And I got to show off this nifty fence post driver. For all you guys that wanted to see it, this is it. No name, no manufacturer, no idea who made it. Might have been painted on it at one time, but there's no labels or marks on this thing that I can determine. So it's just a fence post driver. Cool thing to have. If you have any suggestions for a new video, questions about today's video, or any of the other videos on the channel, just drop a note in the comments below. You know I read them all. Thanks for watching.